Cheers, guys. Epyx911, welcome to the Elitist Geek. Still going strong. 7 weeks of eating healthy and exercising. So, yeah, it's going to be water instead of my beers for a while. I think I've had a total of 4 light American beers, which is almost like drinking water. The Coors Light and Bud Light. Far cry from the 10%, 8 to 10% beer that I usually drink. Because I prefer strong beers from Belgium, Denmark, Holland. So, drinking pure water now. Anyways, what I wanted to chat about tonight was, or rather is, the topic of localization. And for those of you who don't know what localization is, it's pretty much like it sounds. Localization is the work that goes into making a game available for a specific market. It usually implies language translation, text translation, so text in the form of written or voice dubs. Where we commonly see localization is Japanese to English, particularly with JRPG games. But you do see it obviously the other way, English to Japanese. You also see it English to other European languages, whether that's Spanish or German, for those local markets as well. But it's not the process that I want to talk about. It's the time involved. And it's one of those things that I've never understood, even though I've worked in the games industry. Again, I worked at Electronic Arts in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, and we had localization teams. What bugs me to this day is how freaking long it takes. There are games, that I'm literally jonesing for. I get all excited when I see the release, or the first trailers of a game, and then I crash and burn because I realize that's only the Japanese version. And I know typically I'm going to have to wait 6 months to a year plus before I see a localized copy of the game. And honestly, I think in 2014 that's inexcusable. There is no logical reason, not cost savings, not anything really, for localization to take that long in 2014. And I know because, again, having worked at Electronic Arts on FIFA, on NHL, on NBA, we had localization happening in parallel with English while we develop the game. That's how it should be with all games. Now, when I said money shouldn't factor into it, I still believe that. But I know the rationale, I know the reasons why some Japanese companies, and ATLUS, I'm looking square at you, do it. And for them, it's they want to test the waters with a specific game. If it sells well and they deem that it's worth their money and their time, they will create localized copies for the rest of the world, which in gaming terms means Europe, North America, and a distant kind of third in the rankings would be South America, Australia, in terms of numbers, marketing numbers. Now, again, at Electronic Arts, the work happened in parallel. Localization teams, despite what you would think, don't have to be large. Our localization teams were not that large. They were basically a handful of people. I almost think that here, let's take a JRPG now. So we know, based on what I've said, NHL, NBA, those games were pretty much released worldwide with one blanket release date. give or take a few days, weeks at most. Because in sports, everything hinges on a pallet date. That's very important because you want to get a game out, either before the season starts, you want to get a specific game out before playoffs, etc., etc. So it's fairly critical in sports to get it right. Now let's look at a game like Etrian Odyssey 4, which was a fantastic game. I still haven't won it, but I'm very close to winning it on the 3DS. To me, it's a gorgeous, old-school dungeon crawler that we in North America had to wait 7 frickin' months for. 7 months. Just looking at the release date here, July 5th, 2012 in Japan. Wasn't released to the North American market until February 26th, 2013. And the European Union, August 30th, 2013, which for European users is over a year. Basically, we're talking a year and 2 months, really, because it was July 5th to August 30th. So 14 months, essentially. For a game that barely has any voice acting, it's mostly text translation. I know fan subgroups for anime that can get subtitles out for a show within hours or days. True, not as good as a professional translator, but there's no reason the dialogue in a game like Etrian Odyssey 4 can't get localized, i.e. translated while they're developing it. Again, I just don't get it. You have a couple of people. You could say you had 3-4 people. They could even work on a part-time basis because you don't have to have them do localization every alpha or beta release. The main thrust of beta testing is bug testing. And true, text bugs are bugs. But they're not as critical as the showstoppers, the high priority bugs. Bugs like crash bugs, freeze bugs, bugs that kick you out of the game, that completely bork the system, have the highest priority. Those are bugs that you need to have tested every single release and looked for new versions of every single release. You can get by with localization testing every 3rd, 4th, 5th iteration. It doesn't need to happen more frequently than that. So really, you have a handful of guys, again, using my example with Etrian Odyssey. You have somebody doing the shops, somebody doing the dialogue, somebody doing the items, somebody doing the skills. You've split it up pretty well, and you've got 4 people that would do that testing. And it's the initial supply of translation from Japanese to English. And then it's the meaning, because sometimes a literal translation, and it is important to have somebody who's very fluent in both languages, because you can have things that are close in meaning but don't mean the same thing. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. Is being Dutch, I speak fluent Dutch, but I had a funny incident that happened. We spoke Dutch until I was about 10 years old at home. My parents divorced. We stayed in Canada with our mother. My father moved back to Holland. Fast forward 6 years, and I hadn't spoken Dutch in that time. I went to live with my father in Holland, and my Dutch was still at grade 10 level. There were at age 10 level, and of course a lot of words forgotten. I hadn't been speaking it every day, unlike, in the interim period since. So my first day of school, I arrived in August in Holland. I was 16 years old, and my first day of school, we had PE class. And in English, when you say you want to swap shoes, you basically say, look, I need to take my shoes off. That doesn't translate literally to Dutch. If you translated that literally to Dutch, it would be ik moet eerst mijn schoenen aftrekken. When I said that, because I did a literal translation in my head, the class busted out laughing. I couldn't figure out why. So I repeated myself. Ik moet eerst even mijn schoenen aftrekken. And again they laughed. Finally, somebody said, Gord, you just said you want to masturbate your shoes. So of course I felt like an idiot, because in Dutch you don't say you take your shoes off, you say you take your shoes out. Uittrekken, not aftrekken. So just an example of how literal translations don't always work. You need to have the meaning translated as well. That's very important in RPGs, strategy games, games that rely on the text, but still no excuse. Again, I think localization should basically happen in parallel with game development. I actually think it would help companies make more money. Games that are super hyped lose some of that steam and momentum when you get all excited about the game. It's released in Japan. You wait 6 months to a year and a half. Your interest may have moved on. But can you imagine the hype and excitement? Etrian Odyssey 5 is released concurrently worldwide. I'd be freaking stoked. I'd be first in line. They would make the money. But anyways, my 2 cents on that topic. Interested in hearing what you guys have to say. Leave your comments below. Subscribe. Like this video if you like it. Let me know what kind of things you want me to cover on this channel. Generally, I do reviews, although I haven't done a hell of a lot. It's been more of a gaming/tech vlog channel. But I do, from time to time, do reviews, product reviews. One of my more popular videos is my review on my Canon camcorder. And my arcade stuff I do from time to time too. So leave your comments below. Let me know if you agree with me. Even if you don't agree with me, I'd love to just discuss the topic and know your thoughts on localization. As always, guys, cheers.